I ain't taking those from nobody.
Jaylen Brown.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at the Celtics Talk Weekly. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Talk Weekly. I am your host, Rob Haytayan. I am with my two co-hosts, Justin Lowe and Ian Angelo, and we are super excited to bring you guys a brand new episode of what I think is going to be, a pretty good one. I can say that. Before I get into the episode, I'm going to have to say it again. Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly. We had a posting daily. We got great content over there. Along with that, if you're interested in starting a podcast, there's no place to do it better than Buzzsprout. We use Buzzsprout, and we absolutely love it. If you got anything in mind, whether it's talking just with friends or if it's talking about the Boston Celtics, talking about any general anything, use Buzzsprout. It's super easy. You can post it all the big name directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It really is great. We recommend it. And use the link in our bio. On your second paid invoice, you get $25 to Amazon. It's a win-win, if you ask me. With that being said, we have the weekly recap. It's finally back. It's super exciting. The Boston Celtics did start the preseason off at home against the Orlando Magic. They caught a 98-97 victory in what I thought was a great way to start the opener. Justin and Ian were both there, as you guys know. And then the Boston Celtics kicked it off right around a week later against the Toronto Raptors at home in another close matchup. All three of us were there in a 113-111 victory for the Boston Celtics. This one we have not talked about yet. But, Justin, give us what the week ahead is.
Getting into the week ahead, the Boston Celtics are on the road to close out their preseason. They're in Florida on Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday, they're taking on the Orlando Magic. Tip off at 7 p.m. Catch that on NBC Sports Boston. And then on Friday, start your weekend with Celtics and the Miami Heat. Tip off there at 6:30 p.m. Catch that on NBC Sports Boston locally and nationally on ESPN2. Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, Marcus Smart, Jayson Tatum are all out on Wednesday due to rest. Jaylen Brown and Al Horford are on the injury report for COVID. That brings us into Ian. He's got what is trending.
So what is trending around the NBA? Al Horford, as Justin just mentioned, tested positive for COVID. Kyrie Irving will not play with the Brooklyn Nets until he gets the vaccine, according to a statement from the Brooklyn Nets. And Ben Simmons actually showed up in Philly for the first time, which is a little surprising.
Dude, now I don't want to get too off topic because, we should be talking Celtics, but I just think the idea that Simmons shows, he didn't tell a single member in that organization that he was showing up. He shows up right before the game starts to get his COVID test, gets tested, and then leaves. Is that not bizarre?
He showed up like an ex that was just trying to get all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And he didn't really want to be there, but he just kind of had to be.
I know.
So now is getting tested part of the protocols? If you don't, you get fined. Is that why he did that?
I think it's you have, in order to return to the team, because Simmons hasn't been around the team yet, you have to get a negative COVID test to be around them.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, if you're vaccinated, I don't think you get tested regularly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's all interesting.
The big headline there is the second Celtics player, Al Horford, did test positive. He is now in quarantine. It's a big blow. You see this trend. The Celtics, we thought we finally got over the hump of injuries, of COVID, but we haven't. We're still here. We're still talking about it. It does suck. But something I will say is that I'm praying, hopefully, that we're going to get over this hump before the season starts. I do, however, think Horford will miss the home opener, or the season opener against the Knicks. He may be available for the home opener on the 22nd against the Raptors. Brown should be back for the season opener, which is at least a positive. What are your takeaways on this whole, COVID-19 stuff?
Honestly, I don't know if this is karma for the Red Sox beating the Rays in the ALDS, but The only response that I had when I first saw the news was just like, come on, man. Like, how many more of these things do we got to deal with? Like, we dealt with it all last season, and like, it's not his fault that he got COVID, but at the same time, it's just like, come on. Like, we had to go through this again.
I mean, on the brighter side of things, we look at it and it's like, okay, it's preseason. At least it's not going into the playoffs, right? Like last year, or halfway through the season. But obviously, you don't want anybody to get COVID, whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated, or healthy or not healthy. You don't want anyone to get it. But at least they got it now, right? At least that happened. Doesn't mean they can't get it again, but it slims the chances down a little bit. And I think what's something in a more positive outlook at this, Al Horford and Jaylen Brown had a hell of a preseason from what we've seen so far. Though we've only seen one game from Jaylen Brown. We saw him put up 25 in his debut. I mean, don't forget, he missed a big portion of the end of the last season and the playoffs because of that injured wrist. We didn't know how he was going to react, didn't know how he was going to play. Came out, looked pretty sharp in that one game. And then Al Horford, obviously, 16 points in the starting lineup in the 113-111 win on Saturday night. So they both looked pretty well for the little time we saw from them, but hopefully we'll get them back early on and we won't have to worry about it for the most from those two.
Well, that's something I want to talk about. Actually, was Saturday night's game. We were all in attendance. It was the Garden was rocking. It was a great atmosphere. You loved, like we said, talked about the last episode. All the fans are finally back. It's great. My takeaways, really, Jayson Tatum, something stood out right away is 7 assists from Jayson Tatum, to 29 and 7, which I absolutely loved in 8 minutes. You're thinking if he's playing his normal 36, that's a triple-double, probably a 28-point triple-double. Like you said, Al Horford's spacing in production was awesome. He went 4 for 4 from beyond the arc, really kind of making his statement where you might see a double big starting lineup with Horford and Williams. And I don't know about you guys, but I loved what I saw out of Romeo Lankford. He got thrown into the starting lineup, had 13 points in 18 minutes, 5 for 6 shooting, 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. Romeo letting it splash with that new number 9. What do you guys got for takeaways?
I think those two players right there have been the biggest kind of surprise or maybe standouts for the Celtics so far. Given we've only played 2 preseason games, Al Horford and Romeo Langford look amazing. And Al Horford coming off of, he had a great season last year. Didn't get that much time, 29 games played, fairly healthy season. He looked great. Some people, doubting him, making, don't even think he's going to put up 10 points even in a game. He proved a couple people wrong just in the second preseason game. Romeo Lankford, we know the story of Romeo. The first 3 years, the first 2 years, predominantly just injury prone, injury after injury after injury. Every time he seems to come back, then he got COVID. Summer League didn't really show us really anything. Went up and down, right? Then that, his ankle that was bothering him or his wrist, something like that, sat him out 2 games. But these past 2 games, I mean, first game 1, he missed it. He didn't come into the fourth quarter. He sparked the run for the Celtics, who were down 11, hit the game-winning shot. Then the next game, Jaylen Brown goes down. Who steps up into the starting lineup? It's Romeo Langford. What does he do? Goes out there, scores double-digit points, consistent three-point shooting, playmaking, being aggressive on the defensive and offensive end. That's what we like to see out of him.
Yeah, this honestly gives me hope for Romeo Langford because, like you said, Justin, he's been injury-riddled over his entire career so far, and we can't really blame him for that, but at the same time, all the questions coming in was, what did we have in him to begin with? And seeing him be a spark plug off the bench so far has been amazing to watch. And I know this doesn't really matter because it's a preseason, but can we talk about the end of the game? When that line at the end with the freaking Ryan Arcidiacono and all those guys almost blew the game. I know it's preseason and half these guys might not make it, but
that right there, that statement right there, those guys might not make it. So that group of guys know that they, their chances are slim, right? So I think it was a group of 5 guys trying to, do a little bit too much than they had to do, try to prove themselves a little bit. Obviously, they'll get a lot more time and can hopefully play a lot more relaxed in these next 2 games with a lot of the starters being out due to rest. But guys like Jabari Parker, he looked decent to me. It did look like he was forcing it a bit, trying to do a little bit too much. But again, in Jabari Parker's defense, hit him is a 50-50 shot whether he makes the roster or not. You know what I mean? Like he can make the roster and have a pretty good spot roll off the bench, or he can just get cut in general. And the Celtics sign a two-way player like what is it, Archie
Diacono.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah. So I think those group of five guys had a lot of pressure on them, and it was kind of unnecessary, but it was there.
No, I know. And like, I'm not trying to disrespect them or anything. It was just like, that was like just like the one thing that I couldn't like not think about when it came to watching that game.
Yeah, but it was another electric crowd.
It was. It was great. I thought. I felt like everyone was involved. Everyone was super, super loud and the energy. You could feel the energy in the building. I can't wait for the regular season to get started. But something I also kind of want to talk about is I'm looking at the box score here. Everyone off the bench, and I got to give props. Grant Williams made a couple good plays. I'll give it to him. You never thought I'd say that, but at the same time, he made some plays, and I was like, "Oh my God, Grant Williams, what are you doing?" There's one specific where he went into the post, he tried to do a spin move, he lost the ball, ran into the like.
I think he had hit a 3-point shot before that.
Before that, yeah,
confidence was running through the veins.
No, totally. But I give him props. He did a solid job on the defensive end. And he got his buckets through cuts, through spacing properly, and through transition, which I really, really like. I don't like him having the ball in his hand unless he's going up with a shot right away. So, props to Grant Williams. I thought Peyton Pritchard played a solid game, giving us 11 and 5. So I'm looking at the bench, and yes, it's preseason, but, when you have a guy like Schroeder and Brown both out of the lineup, you're looking for, people to step up. Grant stepped up. I'd say Pritchard stepped up, and I even like what I saw out of Richardson. He gave us 2 steals, 7 points, 6 rebounds on 60% shooting. Like, that's totally what you're looking for in these preseason games. Are these 5 to 6 minutes of just really efficient basketball out of these players? And I give them props. I think we saw that.
Now let me say one thing, because I particularly like this player a lot. I'm not saying he's the best, but Enes Kanter looked to me like he was a little bit jittery, butterfingers. He didn't look like himself. He couldn't corral a rebound for his life, which is what he's been known for his whole career. Where do you guys see this, going with him in the rotation? I mean, don't forget, Enes Kanter might not be one of the best centers in the league, but you're pretty deep if Enes Kanter is your third string center. So where does this kind of go? And I know he might play tomorrow against the Orlando Magic, so we'll see more from him. Did you guys notice anything over these last 2 games about Enes?
Well,
yeah.
You go ahead. No. You go. I want to hear what you have to say first before I say anything.
Yeah, so I mean, I know we say this or we've said this for some players where we say it's just preseason and stuff like that, but I mean, you're kind of right. He doesn't look very comfortable. Especially, I mean, maybe it's just because he's on a line with a lot of guys that he never played with, or there are a lot of young guys. I'm not really sure what it is, to be honest. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. He doesn't really look very comfortable at all when he's out there. But yeah.
I think it depends. It depends on what the starting lineup's going to be. Because I think in the game against Toronto, offensively, he couldn't really get in a rhythm. He shot 1 for 7, which is pretty bad. He gave us 10 rebounds. But if you're going to have Horford and Williams starting, just the truth really is that Kanter will probably be playing right around 10 minutes a game. But I think if one of the two between Horford or Williams don't start at all, you really won't be seeing much of Kanter. But with the double big set, I think the rotation goes that Richardson and Schroeder are the first 2 off the bench. They're going to be most likely subbing like Tatum or Brown in someone else, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So as for Kanter, where he falls, I mean, if Grant Williams is going to be doing what Grant Williams did, you could be seeing Grant Williams taking those 10 to 15 minutes a game. That's just, I hate to say it, but that's really what I saw out of Williams, which is, kind of exciting. For Ennis, I think you're going to see it matchup based. Really, if you're playing a guy like he's played Joel Embiid in the past pretty well. If you're playing a guy like Embiid, you might see more of him. And if you're playing a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, you're not going to see him at all. So
you might see Horford a lot.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm kind of thinking about Canner is, Hernan Gomez has looked pretty good too.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
like Hernan Gomez could legitimately get minutes over Canner as well, and Canner might just be a healthy scratch in some games. I'm not sure what you guys think about that, but
I think that's a good thing. That's not. I'm happy that Enes Kanter's a scratch, because there's going to be games this season where he gives us 10 points, 15 rebounds, 15 points, 10 rebounds, totally. So I think that's a really good thing to have. A problem that we didn't have last year, that's really great that we have this year, is that, where can we take a good player and fit him in? Like, how can we get this man fit into a rotational spot? As for Hernan Gomez, you make a really good point there, Ian, too, is that he's shown he can space the floor really well. He's really active on defense. He's not the best defender, but he's active, which is what you want. So I think that's really, really solid. I think there's a lot of different combinations you could go after here.
We're sitting here, right? And, we're kind of talking about, guys like Grant Williams stepping up and Canner at times. I think we're overlooking the fact that how, maybe fortunate we are, right? We haven't had this for a while. We've mentioned this before. We haven't had to choose between who plays this and who plays that. It was always, we're getting thrown in with this. This person's going to have no choice but to, work with this person. No, we actually have depth this year. We need to figure out who fits at what and what lineup works best. We have Al Horford who can shoot. We have Enes Kanter who can rebound. And we have, versatile Robert Williams who can get up and down the floor just like a point guard can. It's a lot to work with, and then you also have power forwards like with Jabari Parker, who's shown he has it offensively, and a Grant Williams who's had a hell of a preseason so far, and even a Juancho Hernan Gomez who showed up in the starting lineup in Game 1.
And going back to Grant Williams, something I do want to say. I know media day he said he dropped right around 15 to 20 pounds, and I remember it was a conversation. I want to say on the season finale of the podcast. What difference is that going to make? I think I've seen that difference. He looks fast. We saw him run the break. I really was kind of shocked. Obviously, it's the preseason. Let's relax, right? It obviously,
he's just waiting for our comments.
Yeah, it's obviously it's the preseason, right? And it's still Grant Williams. But like we said, Bubble Grant Williams did a very solid job. So, I look at this preseason grain of salt and I say maybe Grant Williams can give us something that he didn't give us last season. And I think those 15, 20 pounds really, really did help him. I'll give it to him.
I think with the injury report being a little long the next 2 games, we might see a lot of guys like Grant Williams and Jabari Parker and Enes Kanter. So we're really going to get to see how these guys, can work their way into the rotation.
Yeah, it honestly could be possible, too, that Ime uses a lot of these guys when it comes to game time. You think about it, we're at least you can make 2 solid lines of a legitimate team, and even a third line that is a kind of a legitimate matchup problem at some point. And like you said about Grant Williams, and I'm not even legitimately joking when it comes to this, he's looking really good so far.
Yeah.
And he could potentially
he's looking solid. He's looking let's use solid as the right word here. Solid.
Right.
He looks solid. I think that's a fair. I think that's fair though. He's looking solid.
No, he is. He is looking solid. He's still making Grant Williams plays. That's gonna happen.
He looks solid though.
But he does look like he could. He could legitimately give us a solid
dude.
10,
And you know what?
tonight.
For Grant Williams, though, I think that's a hell of a job for the preseason, because a lot of people coming into this were like, Grant Williams, he's not a rotational player, right? He's gonna ride the bench. So that's good for Grant Williams. I as a guy I'm one of those guys that would say Grant really shouldn't be on the court. After the way he's played, that's making me rethink this, where maybe he should, in matchup situations, get a decent amount of playing time. Which I think
there was that other thing that came out about what Grant, when he was talking about how he was kind of absorbing everything that Al Horford is trying to tell him.
Yeah, totally.
We're kind of underrating the fact that Al Horford could have a legitimate impact on some of these guys.
I mean, look
totally.
at Robert Williams, who's been pulling it from about 15 feet. We haven't seen really though.
I know.
We have not
Oh,
seen that from Robert Williams. Now we're slowly starting to see maybe his game progress.
That's Robert Williams is someone who I've said who's underperformed this preseason. You haven't really seen. He doesn't really look too. He hasn't really played. First of all, he hasn't really played a lot of minutes either game. He's kind of just been thrown out there, and he doesn't really look too engaged and involved. You can kind of tell he's like going through the motions.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed that, but that's something I noticed.
I'm gonna stick with my response and saying that he's still trying to adjust, along with the other 15 guys, how Ime Udoka's offense and even defense is structured. Like I said in the last podcast, what did we see? Ian and I especially, we went to both the games. Rob, you were there on Saturday. What did we see a lot of? We saw a lot of perimeter play on both ends. A lot of versatile. I saw a lot of on-guard switching between Horford and, Horford, and he was playing a point guard up at the top of the key near the three-point line. We saw a lot of that. That doesn't really scream Robert Williams to me. No. The first 3 years we've seen Robert Williams, he's barely stepped foot out of the paint on either end. Right. And now, we're slowly starting to see him progress into that mid-range shot, even, free throw line jumpers. Maybe he's trying to find his way into the rotation a little bit, into the play style.
I'd love to see him to be able to catch up mid-range, face up, and beat his guy off the dribble. I'd love to see that in the future, maybe. That could be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Justin, it's going to take time. It's a new system. He's still a young guy. And, for what it's worth, he hasn't played a full season yet. And he's got a lot of pressure on him right now because he signed that huge extension. So, I mean, I think we're just going to have to give him time. I don't think coming out the gate, he's going to be like, he's not going to be a Rudy Gobert coming out of the gate or Clint Capella out of the gate. But as the season progresses, I feel like he's going to improve more and more.
For sure. Something I do want to talk about, though, is there were a lot of positives, but I think there were some negatives, too, we got to take away from this game. One of those was that 43-point second quarter Toronto had. In reality, this shouldn't have been as close of a game as it was. We kind of, let them climb back into it. We led 31-16 at the end of the first, and then entering halftime. We fell to what I believe we're down by 59 to 57 entering the half. So obviously we let up 43 points in that second quarter. I do think defensively, you still see a couple struggles. Baring, Schroeder, and Brown weren't there. What did you guys think of the defense side of things?
I think they made little mistakes. I think a lot of the first half problems were the Celtics were too concerned about the officiating in a preseason game. We saw Jayson Tatum get teed up. I did see, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw it on TV, but I did see Ime Udoka go over to Jayson Tatum during the timeout. Maybe said a little something because, I remember in a press conference not too long ago, I don't know, I believe it was after the first game against Orlando, he says, leave all that BS to me. You go play your game and let me do that job and, let me speak to the rest. Let me defend you guys. You guys, go out there and do your jobs. Yeah. I think that might have been, what he said to Tatum, something along the lines of like, dude, look, I know, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let me do the talking, because in a regular season game, emotions are going to flare. Yeah. And we could see two technicals go by with the snap of a finger and boom, Tatum's on in a close game. Yeah. But in all honesty, that seems to, go on now. And all these new rules, James Harden tried to lean into a shot and missed it completely, looked for a foul, and he was livid. I mean, there's going to be technical fouls called like that, like crazy. So I think it was a lot. You got to focus on the game. Especially in preseason, don't complain about all the calls yet.
I think as for Jayson Tatum, we're going to see a real what he's made of come regular season. I totally think he's just getting back into the swing of things without a question. Some things that stand out to me is the fact that he went 3 for 10 from beyond the arc. Also, he only took 6 free throw attempts. So hopefully when the regular season hits, he's a little bit more willing to get down there and get hit a little bit more and get to the free throw line. But as for Tatum, I thought he played well. 29-7. I'll take that if he can give us that every night.
Yeah. He had a pretty good third quarter too. He kind of turned it on a little bit in the third quarter. Yeah. I think I mean, this was kind of a little bit more prevalent that I noticed in the Orlando game than it was in the Toronto game, but the turnovers are still a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that, like, I mean, we do have to like give Marcus Smart some time too, because this is his first season that he's going to be the legitimate starting point guard.
I
So I
think he
feel like
looks better, though. I
and
think
he does look a
looks
lot better in this game
Yeah.
than he did the first game. But I mean, it would still be nice to see like the turnovers be a little managed a little bit more.
Man, yeah, I think they'll come with the flow of the offense once we kind of get into the swing of things. Something in terms of flow of the offense that I thought was really well. I thought we've been cutting really well.
Yeah.
I feel like the ball's being swung. Last year we kind of sat. This year it sat and watched. This year I feel like Amy's really done a great job of making sure people are cutting and shifting the defense, which I think is very important. I don't think that's something you should look over. However, we got two more preseason games coming up. Like Justin said, one against the Magic in Orlando at 7, one against the Heat in Miami at 6:30. What are you guys looking for out of these final two preseason games from the Boston Celtics that you didn't see the first two preseason games?
Oof. A lot of bench action. A lot. A lot. We saw that in game 1 and 2. Game 1 and 2. Don't let your foot off the gas pedal. Celtics, like you said, did that in Saturday's game. I thought they did it in the third quarter against the Orlando Magic. Magic started to pull away in Monday's game, and the Celtics didn't come back till later on. Just keep your foot on the gas pedal. Like I said, with the majority of the starters out and a couple, 6, 7, 8 man going to be out for the Celtics these next two potential games, we're going to see guys fighting for a roster spot, go out there and compete. But other than that, just go out there, compete, stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Yep. Totally.
But yeah, so I agree with you, Justin. I really want to see who's going to compete for, a spot on this team. And like, what Josh Richardson said about the Celtics and how they're trying to kill each other in these scrimmages and, the intensity. And like, I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see, who makes this team. And, we might have to see some cuts that we might not have thought we were going to see. But at the same time, like you said, just a lot of bench guys. I'd want to see like how these guys do. Romeo Lankford, Grant Williams, Darren Neesmith. I want to see how these guys do in the next couple games.
So I got two players. I feel like it's a matchup almost and they're on the same team. I feel like it's Aaron Neesmith versus Romeo Langford right now. And I say that because I look at the rotation and I don't see time for both of them to be playing as much. Neesmith had a solid game against Orlando, right? He had 10 points on 4 for 5 shooting. However, Langford got that starting spot with Brown out of the lineup, and he played really, really well. So these last two games with, the starters kind of taking a step back and not playing, I would love to see which one out of these two take that step forward and kind of show which one's can provide on a consistent basis, because Langford recently has got me thinking, this is the first time he's come into a regular season. He's had a great offseason staying healthy. He played in the summer league. Obviously, like you said, Justin, he had, ankle problems he ran into. But, he's coming to training camp. He stayed healthy. He's entering his third year in the league, right? So, there's a chance. Remind you, Langford was the 14th overall pick. So, Langford might be a guy that we start seeing a lot of, and these last two games, I think, is his chance to prove it.
Yeah, I think the pressure might be even more on Romeo Langford because last season was Aaron Neesmith's first season. He's playing his first set of preseason games. He only had 2 last year, playing his first set of training camp, summer league. Romeo, on the other hand, has been here 3 years, and his 2 little buddies in Tremont Waters and Carson Edwards
and Taco
couldn't provide much. And Taco couldn't provide much to this team when they were healthy, and they were more healthier than him. Now I think it's kind of on Romeo to come in here, play like he has been playing in this summer league so far, and take advantage of these next 2 games. Same thing for Aaron Neesmith, obviously, but I think the pressure more lies upon Romeo Langford. We didn't see a lot of Aaron Neesmith, by the way, in that Raptors game. We saw 14 minutes.
No, we really didn't.
We saw 14 minutes from him. But in game 1, we saw a lot of Aaron, but we didn't really see Romeo until that fourth quarter. So now both of them kind of spotlight a little bit these next two games. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah,
Well,
honestly, when it comes, oh, sorry.
no, you go. Don't worry about it.
When it comes to Romeo Langford versus Aaron Neesmith, I think, and now I'm not saying that this is what they're going to do, but in my opinion, I feel like they're going to try to see what they can get out of Romeo Langford before Aaron Neesmith. Just because, like you said, this is like what his third year coming into the third year. This is like the first year he's truly healthy. You know, we saw a little bit what Neesmith could do last season, but we still haven't seen what Romeo Langford can do yet. So I feel like they'll try to put more of an emphasis on Romeo Langford, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I watch. And it might be like they're kind of like a Swiss Army knife, the two of them together. We could see that this season, which, I would kind of be opposed to. I'd like to see one or the other get the minutes, but you got to look at all possibilities. But I really like what I've been seeing out of the two guys. They've showed flashes of it. Listen, they can play, which I think is great. I think Pritchard looks consistent. I think overall, so far, the preseason is a lot of positives. But however, we got two players on the COVID list. So, as we get closer and closer to the Celtics-Knicks opener, what needs to get done for the Boston Celtics to be in regular season form?
Just everybody getting on the same page, right? Totally new system coming in into Boston with the coaching staff. Big roster changes. Everybody just needs to get on the same page. Play with pace, right? Don't rush things. And that goes for these next two preseason games as well. Remember, you're trying to learn and cope with this new system. You're not going to get good with the snap of a finger. Unfortunately, that's life, right? If things could get done with the snap of a finger, via my wishes, the Celtics will have 1,000 championships by now. But that's not going to happen, right? Just be patient. Turnovers have been high the last couple of games, so just play with some pace.
Yeah, honestly, I think I just kind of want to see honestly, I don't really know how to say it, but I just want to see what Ime Udoka does with filling out the roster and how each player is going to be used. I just want to see that just a little bit, just to know what to expect, because we might just see different lineups almost every other game depending on the matchup. But at the same time, I'd like to see just a semblance of this is going to be the starting lineup. This is who's going to come off the bench at this time. And then, this is what's going to happen in case of emergency.
That's something Ime Udoka has preached through training camp, was he wants to find a lineup that he can consistently stick with. Over the last few years, he even said, no offense to Brad, but, it's kind of been up and down, right? Where we saw a starting lineup, new starting lineup, every single game. It felt like even when we were healthy, right? We can never figure out, what the starting five is. I think Ime Udoka, after this preseason, will stick with a solid lineup, unless, of course, the matchup varies.
Well, what do you guys think that starting five will be? Because I'm leaning towards, I think we're going to start seeing that Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Williams starting five.
I think that will be it. I think that'll be it.
If Horford comes back, that's probably what it's going to be.
Yeah.
The only thing that might, some depth issues with the four maybe. But then again, with how Juancho Hernangomez and Grant Williams have been playing so far in the preseason, you might not have to worry about that. Hopefully, like Rob said, maybe we do see a Juancho Hernangomez start and Al Horford comes off the bench. He said that last podcast episode. I think it'll vary on the matchup, but I think Ime Udoka right now is leaning towards that Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Rob Williams.
Yeah, that's probably what it's going to end up being, unless they see something as to where they have to put Tatum at the 4. But I don't. Really
I think he's going to lean away from that. And the reason why I say that is because, we've seen now what Ime's kind of mindset goes to when you have injuries. Like Brown was out of the lineup. He had to slide some people in. And I thought it was interesting because I feel like normally you would see you'd slide Richardson in and then move Tatum down to the 4. And then your start lineup would be Smart, Richardson, Brown, Tatum, and Williams. Sorry, but then you kind of saw he put Allen there, and then kept Tatum at that 3. So he's I feel like he's kind of almost trying to keep Brown and Tatum at the 2 and 3 to get those mismatches, which I love. I love Jayson Tatum going back to that 3 spot. And something I noticed, he got big. Like we were standing right next to him during the national anthem. He put on some muscle,
some hefty weight. Yes, he did. I even think Jaylen Brown put on some weight. I had said that to Ian. He looks very defined. Jaylen Brown does, and if we were to run that 2-guard lineup, we might see Jaylen Brown shift down to the 3. If we were to run a Schroeder, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Horford lineup, or Williams, whatever, we might see Brown go down to the 3. I don't know. I see him at the 2. I see the Celtics going big this season with the starting lineup.
Yeah,
that's a big lineup when you think about it. That's a big lineup when you think about it. Tatum playing the 3 with all the muscle and weight he's gained. Tatum at the small forward position. That's a big lineup.
Well, I kind of like guys. Yeah, I like him at the 3. I think it presents a new challenge. I think when he, regardless, you're going to see kind of the same matchups. It's just who's next to him because, obviously they're going to put their best defender on him regardless if he plays the 3 or the 4. But, I think he's going to see some different switches that he's not used to seeing, whether it's he's faster than the guy, whether it's he's bigger than the guy, which I think it's really important if you want to get Jayson Tatum to that next level. I think it's taking advantages of mismatches. You see LeBron, you see Durant, you see Harden. As soon as they recognize the mismatch, that it's a split second, they know exactly what to do. They go to it and they attack. And I think that's something Tatum could improve on, that I think he will improve on this season.
I think the floor spaces out so well when Horford is on the court at the same time as Brown and Tatum. Like that, it even did that back in 2018. It even did that when Fournier was on the floor last year. But now you're replacing Fournier with a bigger guy who can do the same things offensively, maybe just in slower motion. But I'm excited. I think this lineup also will be really good against Philly. I think that'll make like a really good series out of that. Smart and Simmons, Green and Brown and Tatum and Tobias Harris and obviously Horford and Embiid.
Definitely.
So what is it? Zach Lowe? Is Zach Lowe his name of ESPN? It's not Justin Lowe. I know that. I think it's Zach. He said, came out and said, the Boston Celtics are my favorite for the 3 seed, which I feel like been saying all off season, where it's, I don't see I don't see 3 other teams being better than this Boston Celtics out East. And, this is something we got to talk about. If Brooklyn isn't going to move on from Kyrie in terms of trading, and they're just going to tell him, step back this season, hopefully next season it will present different scenarios where you can be around the team. If that's the case, which I think there's a small chance it may be, I personally think he gets vaccinated. But if Kyrie's out for the season and Brooklyn doesn't receive anything for him, I think the East is wide open. Mind you, the Nets are still the favorites, but I think the Boston Celtics now have a serious chance where they can make a run at it. Now, I'm not saying winning the ship, but I'm also saying they can make a run at winning the ship. But I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I got stuck.
I know you're saying the Celtics. Celtics.
Yeah, I'm not saying
swim. They open up.
Yeah. So I'm not saying the Boston Celtics are going to win the championship now that Kyrie Irving's injured, right? What I'm saying is that the Boston Celtics now have a shot at pushing a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals and getting a potential matchup in the NBA Finals. And I can say that with a lot of confidence. Mind you, there's a couple of asterisks that need to happen, a couple of boxes that need to get checked off. I think Tatum and Brown got to take another step. I think, Schroeder's got to prove that he can get back to that 6 Man of the Year candidate. I think, and one of the rookies got to step up. So I think there's 3 or 4 things that got to happen.
Staying healthy.
Staying healthy has to happen. So I think there is some, things that got to happen. But, if Kyrie Irving's out, listen, I want to say we were 3-1 against the Bucks last season, 2-1 against the Bucks. We might have swept them, actually. We might have gone 3-0 against them.
No.
No, we
you
lost
that
one.
one
2-1.
game.
No,
You lost
2-1.
that one game because Tice missed the game winner, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
Mo
2-1.
hit the one.
Yeah, so
we were in no position to win that game, by the way. Not
No.
to get off topic.
It
but-
was a classic last season Boston Celtics run at the last second where they go down 3 and lose. But, listen, if we're talking depth, I got the Boston Celtics as probably the second deepest team. I'd say the Bucks are deeper than us. I think you could make a case for the Nets. But now that Kyrie's not there, I don't think you can make that case as strongly. I think in terms of duos, I think we have the second best duo in the East. I'm taking Brown and Tatum over Middleton and Giannis. I'm sorry, I am. I think if we're talking talent, I think the Celtics are the third most talented team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I can say is we need to see what happens with Philly, because I mean, even though there was turmoil at the end of the season, Philly was still the number 1 seed in the East, and I'm not saying Philly is necessarily better than Boston, but at the same time,
Well,
if
Even
they
if
can
get
somehow
Simmons
fix
back
their
and Simmons has
chemistry,
a career year, I just don't know. Like their depth, I don't know if they're good enough to be.
Philly has the thing with Philly is they haven't shown me they've been the exact same team since 2018. The exact same team. The best shot they had was with Jimmy Butler, and they still fell short. Yeah. So clearly, this whole I honestly think
I forgot that happened.
Yeah, I still think I think they might honestly be better off just moving on from Simmons. I wouldn't even bring him back. Don't put him in a Sixers uniform anymore. I think he hurts them in the playoffs. When you pair Simmons with a player like Embiid, it just doesn't work in a 7-game series, because odds are the coach is gonna find a scheme that works against those two. So I think the Sixers, they might find themselves as a 5 seed, but
I don't know. I'm just talking about like from last year, because they have basically the same team as they did. Barring some like depth pieces that I can't remember off the top of my head. But
the Dwight Howard for Andre Drummond swap, which I think was
that was
horrid swap.
I completely
for the
forgot
Sixers.
about that.
I think the Lakers clearly won that by a mile.
For sure. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Rob, I mean, I personally had the Celtics as the number 3 seed in the East. That's barring, we stay healthy and we have all of the things that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you make a good case that the Celtics can legitimately be, contenders this season. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the finals or anything, but, we can at least hopefully make a run back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, people may call me biased, right? Which you can go ahead and say it. I'll take the hit. But I can legitimately see this team finishing as the 1 seed. I don't think it's going to happen. And I know what you guys are thinking, but hear me out. You got to look, right, throughout the regular season, KD and Harden are bound. KD and Harden are bound to miss some time, right? So there's gonna be like 10, 15 games where they don't have them. So you got to think they go 500 throughout those games. I think our biggest competitor is the Bucks. I think when you got 2 young guys like Tatum and Brown who, bearing any injuries or drastic like COVID games missed, right? They're going to play the whole season 100% healthy, knock on wood. But, like I said, I don't think we're going to be the 1 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're going into the All-Star break and we're the 1 seed. I think that realistically it makes sense with Horford playing the way Al Horford's been playing, with Smart, Richardson, Schroeder, and Williams to back those 3 up. I could see it happening. No question.
Justin, do you want to say
no? Because
something?
I agree. Like, I mean, we got to remember the Eastern Conference did get a lot stronger, yes, but and people who are gonna come in here and say you guys are biased, we're getting the 1 seed. I'm telling you right now, getting the 1 seed means absolutely nothing, because once
look at the Sixers.
Come around,
look at the 2015 Atlanta Hawks.
By the 4th or 5th seed. The Phoenix Suns were the 1 seed last year anyway, weren't they?
No, the Suns were the 2nd seed.
Were they?
Yeah, look at Utah was the 2 seed.
Look,
Utah was the 1 seed.
1 seed. Yeah, that's what I meant.
The Celtics back in
2017.
What was it?
Oh,
2017 went to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were the 1 seed, got absolutely obliterated by the
Yeah.
Cleveland Cavaliers in
the Atlanta
5
Hawks.
games.
The
One
Milwaukee
before,
Bucks have
one
been the
game
1
before.
seed and gotten knocked off.
It's happened, and that absolutely does not mean they're going to go out and win a championship. So when people sit here and they say, "Oh, Celtics 1 seed, look, you can win."
No.
Look at the Tampa Bay Rays in baseball. I know they're two totally different sports, but it's true. They were a 100+ win team and they got bounced in the first round. It happens. It happens. It happens in all sports. And
and I mean,
hopefully it doesn't happen to the Celtics if they do. But I don't know. I just think, and people got to understand, maybe we are being a little bit outlandish. Like, people might see us as being outlandish, but if you were in the Celtics shoes, especially Celtics fans shoes, last year, you would understand why we're all so excited to potentially be just, the top 3, maybe top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, because we had such a terrible year last year, and we finally have pieces to work with, and that everything's slowly coming together. Finally,
I just think Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum are the fact that they've been competing. Right, they've been competing with Giannis and Middleton. Right, mind you, Giannis and Middleton are in their primes right now. They've been competing with them since their rookie season, and they've been competing with them when they were that young. So you guys gotta realize these guys now are just approaching their peak, right? They're still on the uptick. So, are you kidding me? I'm gonna overrate. You can say I'm overrating them, but the way I see it is that these guys are young, right? They were young. Now they're grown up. Brown 6th year, Tatum 5th year, right? These guys are no longer those rookies who were beating the Bucks, right? So my point is that if they have the right team around them, which I think they do, they may not, but I think they do. I think there's no question where they can beat these guys again because they've beaten them before.
And worst case scenario, trade deadline happens. We're not a very good team. We use the whole farm to Washington for Bradley Beal.
Yeah, and we use that. We have you guys got to remember, we had a trade a player exception too, worth $32 million we can use. If like I said, don't be surprised if Jeremy Grant gets on the way to Boston this year. Ainge and Stevens were targeting him last year, so there's a lot of great scenarios that could happen. There's a lot of bad scenarios that can happen, but I think the Boston Celtics are going to be in a good position. With that being said, we are coming to an end of the 2nd episode of season 3 of Celtics Talk Weekly. I got nothing else to say. Like we said, the Boston Celtics take on the Orlando Magic in Orlando at 7 o'clock tomorrow, which would be today when you guys are listening to this. So it'd be tonight. Then they go on the road again against the Miami Heat to finish off the preseason following that Saturday. Or no, not Saturday. When is that? That Friday, the 15th at 6:30. I'm Rob. That's Justin. That's Ian.
Great for MVP.
Grant.